Hey champ, I've been hearing you have been having some trouble. You're confused. And I think it's time that we have to talk about the boys. So back when I first started interacting with the ITG community, I went to my first tournament. It was called Rumble in the Prairie. And I went with the hopes and ambitions to win a couple matches. I didn't, but in between losing matches to Ryan, I noticed that on the results screen there was like a couple of them missing, right? So I asked someone, "Hey man, why are we missing some timing windows?" To which they replied, "Oh man, we're FA players. That means we play with the boys off." I don't know where that voice came from. I have no idea who that was supposed to be. I don't remember who I asked. Anyway, in response to that, on the outside, I was like, "Oh yes, that makes a lot of sense." But on the inside, I was like, "The fuck does that mean?" I eventually figured it out, so I made a little video to explain to you what the boys are. The boys refer to the two outermost timing windows in ITG, the decent and way off window. If you hit your arrow between 103 to 180 milliseconds off of its intentional timing, you're gonna get a boy. They're considered bad timing. Their original purpose was to prevent players from mashing through the charts to pass. We'll get to the details of that later. Don't let their modest appearance fool you though. Those 77 milliseconds are some of the most controversial milliseconds this game has to offer. To understand why, we have to look at how people play this goddamn game. You can mainly categorize how people play this game into two play styles. You got FA, and you got stamina. There are certainly other play styles, but those don't help me explain the boys. FA players try to get a perfect score on the songs they play. The etymology of the term isn't particularly interesting, however, you can take it as play the song perfectly. See, unlike normal humans who are totally content with using that little letter grade in the corner to judge their self-worth, FA players only measure their scores and how much they fuck up. FA players usually turn off the boys. If you look at the timing distribution of a typical FA score and take a few liberties with your statistics, you can guesstimate that 3 standard deviations above and below the mean lay somewhere in the excellent window. In plain English, this suggests that it's very unlikely a note will be hit in the decent or way off window. It's more likely that a decent or way off occurs because your pad is oversensitive and the vibrations of your feet accidentally trigger an arrow you didn't hit. Moving ITG pads usually end up shifting the modding a bit, so this is surprisingly common at tournaments. In the consideration of removing the decent and way off timing window, if the problem is player error, the note doesn't get evaluated and turns into a miss, which is a proper punishment for messing up. If the problem is hardware misfiring early, the note doesn't get evaluated yet, which gives the player the opportunity to hit it with proper timing. From an FA perspective, removing the boys is a win-win in either case. It seems strange, but I can't stress how accurate and consistent people are. People got so good at hitting everything perfectly, there's a growing group of absolutely insane people who looked at that 42 millisecond timing window and said, "Man, it's too easy to get these quads. Maybe we should make it harder. Cut the timing window in half. Call it FA plus." To put that into context, half of the FA plus timing window is a bit less than the time it takes Light to fucking travel from Chicago to New York and back. Computer servers wish they could have that type of ping. Stamina players are a little bit different. They don't give a shit about that fantastic window. They may as well have 2 windows, good and bad. As long as you get enough of that good window to make sure that guy doesn't go down to there, you're fucking golden. Stamina is all about passing the hardest songs physically possible. This is when ITG players decide to be a bunch of scientists and engineers, designing their pads to be so goddamn sensitive that you can trigger them by giving them the wrong look. In the same way FA players removed the boys to make their experience better, stamina players invented pad modding so they didn't have to play stamina. Did you like my joke? It's because pad modding's miserable.
They ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
These scientists moonlight as bodybuilders, but instead of reps, they're pumping measures of 16th notes. They play hour-long songs of constant 200 BPM 16th note streams, hoping that they'll be able to do an hour and 10 minutes of it the next week. So what's their opinion on the boys? That's right, Jonathan. That's the noise they make when the boys are off. But to explain why, we're going to have to get intimate with the life bar mechanics. Life bar mechanics in this game are over-engineered in a way that only a programmer could accomplish. You can see Steve Reen's wonderful and succinct description on the screen, but I'm going to give you like a TLDR that's not quite right but close enough. When you miss a note or get a way off, your life bar goes down. Simple. If you hit a decent, it breaks your combo, but it doesn't directly affect your life. So, when you get a great or above, it should go up, right? Wrong, bitch! There's this thing called combo 2 regen, which is a threshold that your combo needs to reach a certain amount before any good notes add to your health bar. The number doesn't stay the same. It gets higher if you miss notes, and lower if you hit notes. But it always stays between 5 and 10. So you're thinking, oh, if I want to gain life, I just have to look at the combo on the screen. See, you may think combo 2 regen refers to this combo, but it actually refers to this combo. Decents break the first one, but not the second one. And they lower that combo 2 regen threshold I spoke about earlier, so they're actually sort of good notes. The madness has a purpose though. If a player were to walk on the pad and try to hit all the arrows on the pad randomly as fast as they can, the combo 2 regen, in conjunction with way-offs and misses, would ensure that the player fails the song. When it comes to stamina though, sometimes players unintentionally trigger this interaction. An example of this is called a way-off tower. Suppose you have an anchor pattern above 160 BPM and accidentally hit the first note as a way off, but you recover before the tower starts and hit all the arrows in the fantastic window. If the first note got evaluated as a way off, the notes are close enough together that the way off window of a note overlaps with the fantastic window of the note before it. All of the anchored steps in the run will evaluate in the way off window, which means that fast and long anchors have the potential to drop a player's life bar to 0 before they realize what's going on. There are many other cases where decents and way-offs dunk a life bar, like if a player accidentally misaligns their foot by a couple of centimeters and hits 2 arrows per step, causing one of the 2 arrows to result in a way-off, which hurts their life bar recovery. Turning the boys off removes situations like that from the game. Since the number of situations that cause you to fail are reduced, it makes passing easier. And stamina people do not like making things easier. They dislike it so much they made one harder than 27! The difficulty discrepancy between passing a song with boys off or on is large enough that stamina players feel that turning them off is against the spirit of the game. So, stamina players leave them on. I want to take a moment to point out that I've been talking about these communities like they're mutually exclusive, but they're not. It's 2020. You can like both. At the end of the day, the general perspective of the communities disagree on whether you should enable the boys. And that's fine, because the goals are completely different within the communities. In one community, it mostly represents hardware failure, so removing it really is only a quality of life change. For stamina, removing the boys is kinda like widening the fantastic window. It makes the game easier while ruining the integrity of the game. At the end of the day, you might be wondering, should I turn the boys off? And I don't give a shit. Do whatever you want, whatever makes you happy. Don't be surprised if people dunk you for making the game easier, but honestly, who cares? I don't really care. However, there's one thing you shouldn't do. Please don't mash for a pass, not because it doesn't count, but mostly because people get angry, and that makes a lot of messages, which needs electricity that comes from burning trees. Then you'll hurt the earth,